thank you so much for having me here today. As Sharon mentioned, my name's Marissa Ellis. I'm the CEO and founder of Diversily. So let me start by asking a question. What do we all have in common? Although I've lost the chat. I want to be able to see what people are saying. Where's the chat? Where's the chat? Okay, I got the chat back again. We're okay. Yeah, so feel free to share your thoughts as to, what does everyone here on this conference call have in common? And yes, it's the fact that we're all on this conference call. Yes, it's the fact that we're all giving up our time on a Saturday to come and learn more and share together. But for me, I think the biggest thing, it's that we all want to make a difference. We all care about making the world a better place. And I think before we even begin, I think it's worth acknowledging that, respecting that, and giving yourself all a clap, a hug, and a boost to say, keep on doing the work that you're doing, because that work is so important. And I think that's why this network is so important, because it can be difficult and it can be hard to sustain that energy and that focus. And that's what the network's for. It's about sharing, it's about learning together, it's about supporting each other. And I think to be able to do well, to be able to achieve our kind of shared collaborative mission of increasing diversity and inclusion and equity, equality, we need the right tools, we need the right strategies, we need the right tactics to be able to make a difference. And the reason that Sharon asked me here today was because I have been building a tool set since I started Diversily, and I have tools that can help you. And I think by using the tools, you can build your competence, and by building your competence, you build your confidence, and by building your confidence, your competence improves even further. And then ultimately together we can make a difference. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is how to lead strategic change, how to galvanize action, and how to develop inclusive intelligence. So it's a huge topic, and I'm grateful to Dan for sort of sowing the seed, I guess, in terms of what inclusive leadership is all about, because it's absolutely fundamental. I mean, I think if there's one thing that can help us make a difference, it is inclusive leadership. Without it, I just don't believe we can be successful. So let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. So I have grown up in the tech sector. I don't know if we've got anyone else on the tech sector on the call here today. I'm guessing, well, I don't know actually. If anyone also works in the tech sector, share this in the chat. But I've grown up I was promoted quite rapidly within my career, and I reached a point of being head of product for a number of different software companies. So product is about essentially creating a strategy for a product, taking value to your customers through technology. And I love it. I love the sort of the strategic nature of it, the people orientated nature of it. And one day I was sitting in my office, and I got called. I'd just taken out a Satsuma from my drawer because I was suffering from morning sickness, and I needed sustained food to keep me going through the day. And I got called into my boss's office, and he said to me, "Marissa, I'm really sorry, but you're going to be made redundant." And he said, "Not only that, but actually your whole team's going to be made redundant. And not only that, but actually most of the organisation we're massively downsizing because we're selling the organisation, and this is the only way that we can sort of find our way through this." So my whole world was essentially turned upside down. I knew I was about to have a child, but I didn't know much else. I didn't feel like I was able to go and get a job with this kind of growing bump. And I didn't really know what I wanted my kind of future to be. I was lucky enough to have built an amazing reputation. I was lucky enough to have an amazing network, and I was at a point where I had good skills. So I did the only thing that I knew how to do, which was set myself up as an independent consultant. And ever since that day, I have been an independent consultant. And I spent many years, I'm sure many of you on the line can relate to this, sort of figuring out how to balance parenting with child rearing. And it's challenging, and it's during that journey that I became very aware that we don't live in a meritocracy. That this kind of fair and just world that we might naively think we live in, it does not exist. There are complete indiscrepancies. And one day I was, many years later, I was in a room and I was strategizing about the future of technology, the future of technology. And I was sitting in a room and I thought, why am I the only woman in this room? And I don't know why it occurred to me on that day, because I'd spent most of my career being the only woman in the room. It was nothing new to me. And I thought to myself, why is everyone in this room white? And again, I don't know why, but something about this day made me question, made me challenge. And suddenly all of these blind spots that we as a sector were not aware of suddenly turned into gaping holes. And I felt compelled to do something about it. And it was at that point that I started Diversily. And my mission was to raise essentially the inclusive intelligence of the nation, of anyone in the industry who needed it. For me, it had been a missing part of my business education. We'd been sort of blindly, naively, arrogantly trying to create technology for a world that we just had no idea about, a vast majority of how the people within that world felt, their needs, and how this technology could support them. And it was causing problems. We were creating, as an industry, we were creating racist chatbots. We were creating technology that didn't respond to female voices because it had never been tested by female voices. So I realized there was a problem. I realized I was going to do something about it. And I didn't want to be another voice. I wanted to come with solutions. And the solution that I came up with, my sort of offering to the market, which now turns out to be not just for diversity and inclusion, and it turns out not just to be for the tech sector, is the change canvas and the growing set of tools that I've been creating through Diversily, which I'm going to tell you more about today. But before I tell you about the tools that I've created, I just want to tell you a little bit about my philosophy and I guess a little bit about how I think. And again, thanks to Dan for sort of sowing seeds on this one. I think that we've sort of historically had this massive separation between leadership and diversity and inclusion. I think leaders are inclusive thinking, inclusive intelligence, inclusive leadership has not been a fundamental part of leadership. Leaders have not been incorporating this into the way that they lead. And as you heard from Dan, and as I could share with you in more detail if we had more time, it is a fundamental part of leadership. It is how you lead effectively. Understanding the needs of everyone, bringing everyone along with you on that journey is how you will be successful. And similarly, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, diversity and inclusion has seemed like a sort of a compliance box ticking activity. It seemed that people who have poured their hearts and souls and working passionately in this industry for decades, but have they got the right skills? Do they have the leadership skills to be able to lead strategic change? Are they sitting at the right tables? Are they high enough in the organization to be given the empowerment to drive the change that's needed? Are those diversity and inclusion objectives fundamentally built in to the objectives of the organization? Is it all closely tied together? And I don't believe it is. And I think that's where we need to change. I think we need to embed strategic thinking into the way that we manage diversity and inclusion. And I think we need to embed inclusive intelligence into the way that we lead. And I think we need to change the narrative about leadership. And I think, again, thanks to Dan for sowing the seed on this one, but the way that I think of it, and I've been running a inclusive leadership workshop, which is currently on hold because face-to-face workshops are not something that we're doing at the moment. I'm working on turning the content into something that can be consumed online. You can find out more about it on my website. The link is below. You can we'll be offering discounts to people who sign up at the moment. But then the narrative, the way that I think of it is that inclusive leadership is about three things. It's about transforming yourself, it's about transforming others, and it's about ultimately getting the best results. And when you put it like that, why wouldn't anyone want to be an inclusive leader? Why would you not want to become a better leader? Why would you not want to achieve your personal goals? By building your inclusive intelligence, by building your empathy, by developing your own skills, you will become a better leader. There's a win for you. Similarly, inclusive leaders are fantastic at supporting the people around them. They help others to thrive. They help others to bring their true selves to work, their full selves to work, and they help others achieve their goals. And by creating this inclusive, cohesive environment, that's how you get results. That's how you drive performance. That's how you achieve your goals. And ultimately, that's how you create a better world. So the work that I've been doing around inclusive leadership, and I created a very specific change canvas, and I'm going to tell you more about the change canvas in a second. It's essentially a template that you can fill in as a leader to help you think about your own personal leadership journey and where you are, where you want to be, and what you're going to do about it to get there. So you can find out more about that on my website. The change canvas is free. It will always be free for organizations. my mission, my aspiration is, I believe that if I can create tools that can empower other people, those people can drive meaningful change, and together we can make a difference. That's my kind of the philosophy of what I've been doing. So, you know, share the change canvas, share you know, all the work that I've been doing, and, you know, together we can make a difference. Oh, why can't I go to the next slide? Okay, so let me introduce the change canvas to you, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how it's being used, and what you can do with it. Now, this session is going to be very much me telling you things, but the actual nature of the change canvas, it's about facilitating a conversation. So, you know, we could have had a completely separate, and potentially it could be something we do as a follow-up session, is we use the change canvas to facilitate a dialogue. And the change canvas is essentially 5 boxes on a page, very simple. And I think that's where its power is. Its power is in drawing out what's important and summarizing those key points on a page. So the top half of the change canvas is essentially about strategy. It's about the reflection board, is about understanding the why, exploring the context that will frame your journey. It's about being an explorer. It's about drawing out the challenges that you want to solve, the problems that you want to solve. It's where you can let in that openness, that honesty, that vulnerability. The vision board is about being a visionary. It's about setting the future, setting your goals, your mission, the vision, the view, the future that you want to see. And it's about aligning people and making sure that everyone is crystal clear in terms of specifically what you want to achieve. And that can go from your higher level vision right down to your quarterly objectives. You know, what are the very specific goals that you want to achieve in the short term that are going to take you forward, that are going to help you achieve your mission. The progress board at the bottom is about turning ideas into actions, into results. I come from a sort of a technology world of agile development, lean principles, and it's about let's bite off small chunks, let's make things happen, let's see results, let's iterate, let's refine, let's course correct. And in this time of Corona, where suddenly everything's out the window, you know, the original strategy, we need to revisit it. The change canvas is about empowering organizations, about teams, about leaders, to constantly be course correcting, to constantly be connecting that strategy in your vision board to the actions that you're taking on a daily basis, so that your strategy isn't something you put away in a drawer and look it up and it's 27 pages that no one ever reads. It's there, it's very visible, and it's constantly connected to the action that you're taking. So the ideas board, it's all about being creative. It's about coming up with ideas. It's about encouraging inclusion. It's about reaching out to diverse voices to hear of all the different ideas that can make address the problems you've identified in your reflection board, or make your goals and your vision board a reality. The action board is about coming up with actions. It's about giving people specific targets, specific dates, specific steps to take. And the results board is about celebrating those successes constantly. And this is something we often don't do. We just plow on, we just keep on going. We just need to keep on doing more. But it's really important to just take a moment and just to say, do you know what have we achieved? And when I talk about results, for me, a failure is a result. A failure is an opportunity to learn. First act in learning is what FAIL stands for. A decision is a result. A decision is a step forward that means that we have got enough information that's enabled us to make a decision that is going to take us forward. An achievement is a result. All of these things are results that we should share. So often we achieve things, but we don't share them widely. So specifically in the diversity and inclusion space, something happens, but we don't share it with the wider audience. So there's a network in the corner over here doing something, but the rest of the organization has got no idea about it. The results are to be shared, that they're to be cherished, they're to be celebrated. So that in a nutshell is what the change canvas is. And it's been an absolute joy over the last couple of years to watch its use grow. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how that's happened and how you can use it. So this is the change canvas that Sharon referenced, and this was an event that we ran. I didn't run it. It was a joint event by Bristol City Council, Burgess Salmon, and the NHS, and it was an everyday inclusion event. And there was an array of lived experience speakers. There were people from different organizations, and they were all sharing, and the panelists were incredible, and so much information was shared. And whilst the event was happening, I was scribing, I was writing down on post-it notes, mapping their different messages onto the change canvas. And at the end of it, I told the story, and that we saw the connection between what everyone was saying into this single journey of change. And where the real value is, the fact is that we can look at this today, and you can all take this into your organization, and you can have an honest conversation within your organization and say, where are we? How are we doing? What, you know, let's look in the vision board. What does good look like? Let's see what came out of these events. Let's have a look at some of these suggestions, and let's see, well, what is our vision? Where is it that we want to be? What are some of the results that people are seeing, and are we seeing those results? So it not just was useful on the day, but it provides this kind of lasting record that can continue to sort of, you know, the gift that keeps on giving, so to speak. So when I think about, so I've sort of described the change canvas in its sort of, you know, high level what it's about, but actually it is a tool for managing strategic change. And of all the different use cases that I'm going to share with you today, that is where the greatest value is, and where I've seen teams totally transform the way that they work using the change canvas. That's where the value is, because those teams every day, the change canvas it's their frame of reference. It's this single page where everyone has this absolute clarity in terms of what's happening. So the vision board, sorry, the reflection board on a daily basis is specifically listing out the challenges that they want to solve. And it's in that reflection board where they're having the conversations about purpose. They understand what their purpose is. And Dan touched upon this earlier, but for me, this is so important. For me, it's about, I'm just going to bring them all up. For me, it's about connecting your purpose in your reflection board and seeing that come through as impact in your results board. And that's what motivates people. That's why people want to come to work. I saw an interview of a factory worker during the COVID crisis, and he was being interviewed on TV, and their factory used to produce parts for aeroplanes, and now they were producing parts for ventilators. And he was being interviewed on TV, and he said, "We have never worked so hard. Our team are in the factory constantly. We're working around the clock, but we have never been so happy. We are so motivated and so driven because we know that we're making a difference. We are making these parts of these ventilators. We're contributing to the COVID crisis, and we're so inspired. We want to be a part of this." And it's that purpose that had given them this kind of sense of meaning, this sense of drive, and that's had increased their productivity. So by putting the change canvas at the heart of your initiative, for people who work in D&I that maybe aren't used to sort of leading strategic change, this can help simplify things for you. This can help you get at the kind of the key elements that you need to move forward change on a single page, and it can enable you to have the right conversations. The vision board, as I say, is about mapping out your specific goals, and generally you do this on a kind of quarterly planning cycle. So on a quarterly basis, you're redefining what your goals are, you're making sure they connect to your higher mission. You then move into your ideas board and you're saying, what are the initiatives we're going to pick up this quarter? What are we going to do this quarter? Great, let's prioritize those. Which ones are going to deliver us the most value? Which ones are really going to address our problems? Brilliant. What are the tasks we're going to do? Who's going to do what? How are we going to make this happen? And then you reflect again. Great, what impact have we had? What's the progress? And it brings everyone together. So the change canvas can help leaders, and it can help diversity and inclusion practitioners. So let me just share a few of the ways it can do this. So I've talked about managing strategic change, and the where it's being kind of used out there in the field, if you like, is not just for diversity and inclusion. I've seen it being used for agile transformation. I've seen it used by consulting teams who are looking to just change the way that they constantly drive and improve themselves. It's being used by Oxford University Press for diversity and inclusion. So there's all sorts of different organisations, large and small, who are embedding it either within a specific team or embedding it more as a kind of organisational principle. But essentially, it's about uniting people around a shared vision and a plan. And as a leader, that is absolutely what you need to be doing. It's about opening up conversations. It's about gathering feedback. And it can also be used, as I mentioned before, to develop yourself and lead others and mentor others. So you can either use it to map out, the change canvas is about mapping out a change journey. That journey could either be the journey of an organization, or it can be the journey of an individual. So depending on how you use it to set your focus and what that focus is on, depends on what you're going to be using it to focus on. So it can, as I say, it can either be an individual or an organization. From a diversity and inclusion practitioner's point of view, you can use it to manage D&I as a strategic change initiative. You can use it, you can follow those boards, you can have those conversations, you can set out your goals, you can define your initiatives, you can bring people together around it and manage it like a strategic change initiative. You can use it to change hearts and minds. You can use it to open up conversations. It's great for running workshops. You put the change canvas on the board and you get people to contribute. You get people to share their ideas in the different boards. The event that I told you about, I was scribing, but in other events you use it as an interactive tool where people are contributing into different boxes. So you set your frame at the beginning and you get people to contribute. You can use it to co-create solutions. And there's one particular event that I've developed, which is called the Inclusion Hackathon. And I'll tell you more about that in the next slide. And you can use it to embed D&I into everyday practice. And again, that comes down to, there's a framework that I've developed called the Inclusive Experience Design Process. And again, you can find out much more about that on my website, but it's a deeper journey into the change canvas to look at how you can make any experience more inclusive. And really it's around empowering people, empowering managers throughout the business to have these conversations. I don't believe that we can drive the change that we need if we leave it just to the D&I experts. We need to get everybody thinking about diversity and inclusion. We need to embed it into everyday practice, and we need to empower everyone to be having these kinds of conversations. It can be used to support mentoring programs. It can be used to run events, as we've mentioned. So if you visit the Diversily website, these are some of the different areas that you'll see. So the strategic change I've talked about, which is how you can use it to embed it as a way of working, a way of defining the way that you will set your goals and you'll create the work to align to those goals. The inclusive leadership is the program that I mentioned, which is we're currently working on creating an online version, but the change canvas is down to free to download. The inclusive experiences design program it's a workshop. It's a workshop where you dive into the change canvas and you can self-serve. There are a couple of other frameworks, and I'll show you one of them in the talk today. One is called the viewpoints canvas, and one is called the inclusive lenses. And it's a way for you to take any experience, let's say recruitment. We want to make our recruitment process more inclusive, and you follow the process and you answer the questions as you go, and it helps you come up with ideas, and you map those ideas into your change canvas and you come up with your actions and you iterate and you take those things forward. The Inclusion Hackathon, as I say, is a packaged workshop that is available to run in your organizations. It's designed in a way that you can self-serve. So I ran it, for example, for one global organization. I ran it in the London office, and then I trained up facilitators around the world. There were about 4 or 5 different countries that ran it, and those facilitators then ran it in their own countries. It can be converted into an online format. It also can come with like a system so that you can log ideas online instead. That was a particularly kind of powerful experience because people want to talk about this, people want to share their ideas, and if you can create an environment where people are co-creating solutions, but most importantly you've got the commitment from management that the best solutions, the ones that have the highest number of votes, will get taken forward, you suddenly create this feeling of empowerment. People share, they co-collaborate, they come up with their ideas are listened to, and some of those ideas are taken forward, and you start to see the progress. So it's a really empowering way to make a difference. And then the final two, one is about the events, which I've spoken about, and the other one is about mentoring. So there's so many different ways in which it can be used, and I sort of don't want to kind of overburden you with too many different ideas. It's all freely available on the Diversily website, and you can kind of explore it at your leisure. So the one framework that I did want to share with you today is this idea of the inclusive lenses. And I'm not going to talk through all of them because we don't have very much time, but I thought it was just important to share a little bit about what they're about. And they do follow on nicely from some of the things that Dan was saying. But I think my philosophy is that we need to teach people to think inclusively. Inclusive intelligence is a skill, and intelligence is something that it's your ability to take a situation and figure out the best approach in that situation. It's, when my children are learning maths at school, these days they teach them how to solve the problems. They don't teach them just to kind of follow the script. And the inclusive lens is, to me, that's the analogy. It's, you know, you're giving someone a fishing rod, not a fish. So the idea with the inclusive lenses is we're saying if inclusivity, if diversity and inclusion is your goal, what are some of the things that you should be thinking about? What are some of your objectives? And if you can start to see these things as objectives and things that you're trying to achieve, what are the things you do to make it happen? And there are 8 of them: valuing diversity, seeking representation, countering bias, creating equity, removing blind spots, building empathy, fostering belonging, and considering impact. Now, we're not going to go into all of them, but just to give you an example, we'll just take a couple of examples. So we've been talking today about inclusive leadership. So let's just take one example and say, if valuing diversity is your goal, and we're thinking in the context of leadership, you could be thinking in the context of you want to leverage diversity in the context of an event you're running. You want to leverage diversity in the context of your recruitment process. You want to leverage diversity in the context of the way your team interacts with each other. But let's just take an example of leadership. You might say, if we want to leverage diversity, if we value diversity, what are some of the things that we might do as leaders? Well, we might watch out for groupthink. If we really value diversity, we're going to have an eye out for groupthink. We're going to look for culture add, not just culture fit, because we value diversity. So we don't just want to bring in a whole bunch of people who are exactly the same. And we're going to build diverse teams. So by using these lenses, you can apply them to the situation that you're in, and that can then help you come up with the actions which you then slot straight into your action board on your change canvas to take forward. So let's take another example. It's still in the context of leadership. Let's look through the foster belonging lens. If fostering belonging is important to you as a leader, what might you need to do? Well, firstly, you want to show up as your authentic self. If you want to build if you want to foster belonging, you can't do that if you are not your authentic self. Well, how might you do that? Well, you need to invite feedback. You need to listen to feedback. And importantly, you need to act upon feedback. Without that, you can't foster belonging. You need to ensure that all voices are heard. You need to reward inclusive behavior. So the context of this will be different depending on your specific circumstances, but the inclusive lenses is a tool that you can use to explore how you might build inclusion, build diversity into your experiences, into the products you offer, the services you offer, the experiences that you create for the people around you. And the final example I wanted to share with you is just something that you can just straight away take and use to facilitate a discussion. So this was just one example of a change canvas that was created, and managers were encouraged to take this into their teams and have a conversation. So you can either do this by sharing it via email and putting it in you take the JPEG and you put it in a form that people can add to remotely. So you get people's honest, truthful feedback, or you do it in a workshop setting where you ask people to contribute. And you start, and the context of the conversation is, how can we create a more inclusive team culture? How can we do this? And the top tip that you always hear is, well, what's one of the things you should do? Well, you should ask people how they feel. You should get their thoughts on it. So this is just a sort of structured way of doing that and taking the feedback and ultimately turning it into action. So you'd start in the results board by celebrating, what is it that we're doing already? What already makes our team feel inclusive? You then might move to the reflection board and say, okay, well, what are some of the challenges we face? What might make people feel excluded? You then would move to the vision board and say, well, what does being an inclusive team mean to us? What does success look like? What are we striving for? You then move to the ideas board and say, well, okay, well, what could we do? What could we do to be more inclusive? And you then finish up, as you always do in a change canvas session, in the action board to say, great, what are we going to do now? Because it's all very well talking about it, but what are we actually going to change? And that's how you can open up the conversation, but drive the action to create the change. So that was the final example that I wanted to share with you. I hope that's been useful. I hope you've got a better sense of what the change canvas is. As I say, there's so many different ways in which it can be used. You can explore it on the website. You can take advantage of it to drive your continued success. I'd be delighted for you to share it. If you've got any comments or questions, I'm all ears, always happy to help. And you can follow Diversily on Twitter @Diversily. So thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much. Thank you. That was excellent. And as I said, we've used the Change Canvas as well with your kind help. Just around the hackathons, what's I don't know, maybe it's something I can pick your brain on later, but just in a few words, what's the kind of process of getting all that organized and getting the support? How have you used that in the inclusion space?
Yeah, sure. So the hackathon is specifically for the mission is, how do we make our organization more inclusive, diverse and inclusive? So that's the context. And it's typically run as an in-organization event where you've got senior management support to do something with it. If an organization wants to run it, but you haven't really got the support to do anything with it, I'd be reluctant to do it, because it's you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So step number one is you get the support, and maybe you do it within a team context and you say, what can we do within our team? So number one is you get the support from someone who has the authority to say, whatever comes from this, we're going to make it happen. So that's step number one. Step number two, it's framed as a two-part series. So part one is in the, we spend a lot of time in the reflection board and the vision board, looking at what are some of the challenges that we face within our organization in the reflection board, and what would good look like to us in the vision board. So part one of the hackathon is a sort of interactive workshop where we're kind of exploring the context. We then, at the end of part one, excuse me, break everyone down into teams, and those teams are then go away, and their mission is to come up with ideas. And part one has sort of set the context. And then part two, those teams come back and they present their ideas. And then, so that's the ideas board. And then following that, we then say, what are the actions? What are we going to take forward? And we do a little bit of voting in terms of which of these ideas we think the organization will take forward. And that's how we finish off. And I guess the results board comes into it, because we start in part one by saying, what are we already doing? Let's celebrate the success. Let's celebrate where we've got to. So that's the kind of the format of it. As I say, it was designed as an in-person two-part workshop. I have seen organizations run it where they just do it as a half day. So it's one half-day session. In our current virtual world, it could be adapted. So in that first session, it would be a case of where we have we have lots of interaction where people are either breaking into small groups or standing on lines to indicate things. You just need to adjust that to a kind of a virtual version. So you'd have to create the polls, etc. Whereas in the face-to-face version, you wouldn't. And essentially, it's been created. All of the slides are available. There's a facilitator guide, and there's a participant pack. So there's the kind of the collateral is all there, and then organizations can either run it themselves, or they can I can facilitate for them. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper if you if you want to run it yourself, and it's kind of been developed in a way that you can run it yourself. It depends on it was developed for kind of organizations in the there's some of the stats you might want to adjust if you're, I don't know, for example, in the NHS, you might want to put in some NHS specific contextual information. So there might be some small adjustments, but overall it's kind of off the shelf, ready to go. And as I mentioned, there's also, I've partnered with a innovation company who have got an ideas platform. And if you wanted to run it, say you ran the hackathon for a period of 1 month and it was permeated with 2 workshops, the ideas platform could be open during that period. So you can get ideas in the ideas platform. People can be commenting on those ideas, making suggestions, voting on those ideas. You can use the online tool if you so desired as well.
Right. Thank you very much. That's really a lot to take in. Much appreciated. So I'm definitely going to visit the site and look at the hackathons, because it's a bee in my bonnet at the moment. So I'm glad that there's some tools to help me plan that out. So
I've just seen the comment in the box about using it for our work around dealing with COVID-19, and I wrote a blog about all the different ways the Change Canvas is being used during this time of change, essentially. So if you on the About Us page on Diversily, you can link through to the blog there. So I even used it within my family. We sat down, we had the Change Canvas on the dining room table, and we as a family figured out, right, how are we going to deal with homeschooling? What are we going to do? How's this going to work? And we sat down and we kind of talked about what we were afraid of, and we set our goals in the vision board. And it changed everything, because the next few weeks we kept referring back to the commitments that we'd made, and it was really helpful. Brilliant. So I definitely I'm not just sort of describing it as this theoretical thing. It's alive and real and works.
Brilliant. If you stop sharing now, thank you very much again.
Yes, I will. And thanks everyone.